So you mentioned about designing for spaces in London tend to be a bit kind of restricted. How does that change when you design for different regions? I mean, that's a very good point, because
That
London
is, oh
obviously
my God,
is,
it's so weird
but
that,
when you're designing for different parts of the world,
yeah.
how does that change the approach? I mean, space in London obviously is one thing, but what are there other elements
Of
that really
course, there
vary?
is cultural elements, there is the understanding of privacy, there is religion, there's so many elements. It's fascinating.
Privacy is an interesting one, because I have to
Yeah,
say, in London, or in the West generally, I would say, compared to in the Middle East,
yeah,
the spaces between tables is way bigger. Like in the UK, you can almost feel like you're sitting on the same table
yeah,
as someone, and that's
yes,
absolutely fine. You get
yeah,
on, yeah, it doesn't
yeah,
matter. It's absolutely fine. Whereas in the Middle East, you would
yeah.
expect way more space between
Absolutely.
tables.
Our first international project was in Kuwait for a really lovely restaurant group out there. And Kuwait is an interesting market because there is obviously not a very strong drinks culture. It's non-alcohol. So food is very, very central. It's
Yeah.
a way to entertain, mingle, get to see people relax. So it's actually quite a buoyant food scene. And we went out there, and the client said it's really, really important that for religious reasons, privacy is highly respected here. And it's very, very important that people should have not a space between one to the next table, but certain tables should be completely out of sight or really, really private for people who want to have a much more intimate experience. So that was the first time we kind of had to realize that there's this cultural, local nuances that we need to understand. We, as I said, I just came back from Hong Kong. We're doing a massive space out there. It's 1,200 square meters of a restaurant. It's a monster for London standards. These are like 3 restaurants put together. And although the space is so big, I think we have about 300 covers in total. In London, we would have had 6, 7, I don't know how many, like much more. And we did a design, we showed it to the client, they approved it, they signed it off, and now I met with them and I said, we've done a dense version of your plan where we've put a lot more covers, almost like we would design it in London. And they said, why have you done that? We don't need that. We've got plenty of covers. For us, it's too many. We don't want more covers, it's fine. I said, I know, but I wanted to test if you will like it, because sitting so far away sometimes from other people ends up in a restaurant feeling not as vibrant, There's something very energizing when you go to these small, compact spaces and you're literally sat into someone else's face. But I think you go out to eat and drink because you want to be social. Otherwise, you stay home. You want to feel like you're surrounded by other people. It's part of the experience. So I said to them, I'm slightly concerned that these big distances will create something that hasn't got that ambience, that energy, that vibrancy. And the restaurant we're creating there is Italian food, and we're trying to emulate these very, very all-day, fast-paced kind of Italian spaces. So I said to them, that will not feel authentically Italian if I'm sat so far away. And thankfully, the client looked at it and said, you're right, we need to do that. You're absolutely right. We need to challenge what's the norm in Hong Kong, because same as other places in the world, privacy is quite important. So usually they have a lot more gaps between tables than what we have in London. But at the same time, if you want to get an authentic Italian European experience, then we need to challenge that slightly and get people to come a bit closer and get the buzz of a typical Italian Campari bar, a typical gelateria where you're squashed together, a typical kind of pizza place, and we want to get that energy. So we showed the extreme, and now we're working on the final version, which is almost like somewhere in between the two, because the client said, I appreciate what you want to do, but at the same time, we can't push it too far where people get a bit angry and alienated. So it's really interesting. We're starting a project now in LA, which is our first project in the States. And I said to the client, the space is 8,000 square feet. Are you looking to get smaller spaces in the future, so that I understand where the project will go in the future as it grows? And they said, we'll be taking smaller spaces, really small spaces. I said, really, how small? And they said 5,000 square feet. I was like, this is still gigantic, But in the States, 5,000 is quite small, so you really need to get your head around the cultural element, the privacy element, what the market needs and wants. This is critical wherever you're working, whether you're in Mayfair or in I don't know, Manchester, in any part of the UK. You really need to understand who you're talking to. To me, you're not designing for yourself. That's the great thing about commercial design. You're not designing a private house. You're designing for the audience. The audience you serve this audience. You have to serve this audience. You have to understand them. The same way the staff, the front of house staff, have to serve people great food. You as a designer have to serve them a great experience that they're going to enjoy and like.